Hello, everybody. My name is Ron and I'm from Holland. And I've been asked to share a bit about my view on medical ethics within the context of Buddhism, since I'm both a Buddhist as well as a doctor. About 14 years ago, I encountered Buddhism for the first time, and I've been hooked ever since. The reason that Buddhism speaks to me, and still does, is because it seems to touch and develop a tremendous kindness in each one who truly takes it to heart. Over the last years, I've been inspired by so many beautiful people who truly embody the Buddhist teachings. And aside from being kind, they also seem to have found a lasting happiness and contentment that is rare to find. When we look into the world these days, we see again and again that despite all the modernization and developments, we still haven't found a way to be truly happy. The number of people coping with anxiety, depression, or the number of suicides continues to increase. Buddhism brings something that I personally really missed in my general school education. It shows us how to find true happiness within oneself and inspire it in others. We learn to work with our minds and develop a good heart and wisdom. And we come to discover how taking care of others ironically brings us much more fulfillment than only focusing on ourselves. And we see which actions are wise to undertake and which, even though seemingly tempting, might result in a lot of suffering for ourselves and others. It is good to mention that Buddhism is not some stern religion that tells us what we are allowed to do and what not. It simply shows us that we have a choice in how to act, and that our acts are actually quite powerful in determining whether we experience happiness or suffering as a result. With this in mind, I would like to briefly touch on the subject of abortion and euthanasia. These are widely discussed subjects, since from a Buddhist point of view, the act of taking life is a very serious one. From this perspective, euthanasia and abortion should be avoided as much as possible. But having said that, there is no absolute set of rules, since Buddhism always encourages us to take into account the context and motivation from which we act. There might be a situation in which abortion, for example, is the only way to save a mother's life. Or it could be that there is no one around who is equipped enough to take care of a child, which might result in a very difficult start in life. But who decides if the life of a mother is more precious than that of a child? And is the risk of a heavy childhood enough to end a life? It remains a tricky business, and it is something that I am still working out for myself. How do you help your patient to the best of your ability, help them make the best choice for themselves, and still keep in mind all the aspects of cause and effect that we learn about in Buddhism? The way I see it is that as a doctor, it is not my job to place my point of view on the other, but to guide a patient in their own choice. I do see it as my responsibility that the patient takes all the different aspects into account before making a choice. Especially in a world where everything moves quick and everything is fixable, the risk is that we approach abortion and euthanasia in the same kind of quick fix manner. Sometimes we just don't see the other options we have, and we need some help to open our perspective. In terms of euthanasia, for example, many cases might be avoided by dedicated healthcarers that spend their time to find the best way to pain relief or offer psychological care to deal with the tremendous fear that people who are facing death are coping with. I once had a patient who was terminally ill and had a life expectancy of maybe 1 more year. Whenever I saw her, she insisted on euthanasia and she was very demanding in her wish. Her family had difficulty to approach her. But after spending many moments listening to her, she slowly began to express how deeply afraid she was of dying and how she could not bear the thought of waiting for that moment. Instead, she felt it would be better to just get it over with. When asking what it was she was most afraid of, she spoke about the pain she might have had to endure, or her family having to see her weaken. With a team of health carers, we explained all the possibilities of how to relieve her pain, and her family expressed how much they didn't care about her being weak as long as they could go through this process together with her and not being pushed away. In the end, both the patient as well as the family were very relieved, and she died a natural death. But of course, there are those cases where someone chooses euthanasia because their death is certain and they are in tremendous physical suffering and they have tried every other possibility. Some Buddhist teachers say that in this case, with a pure motivation, it might be okay to help end someone's life earlier. But they do warn us about making euthanasia legal, since there might be a much bigger risk that it is misused and done too easily. I once had a patient who was very severe mentally ill. He became increasingly unpredictable and aggressive. He was a continuous threat to himself as well as to others, and his mental suffering was tremendous, no matter what all the doctors tried in terms of medicine and therapy. It was all futile. He was transferred to a more heavy guarded psychiatric ward, where after a few months they saw no other option than to palliatively sedate him, and he passed. Now, even though I knew his wish had been to die, I struggled tremendously with the idea to put an end to the life of someone who was physically not sick and would otherwise have lived for many more years. But at what cost? This shows that each case is unique and needs a lot of reflection and wisdom. When being honest to myself, I know I would not be able to be the one to do it. But does that make me a good Buddhist? Or am I just leaving the hard job to someone else? It remains a not easy discussion, but the point to come back to is that what counts the most is our motivation and intention behind everything we do, and always try to take into account the benefit of ourselves and that of others. And even if we have made decisions in the past that we now regret, there is no point in condemning ourselves, but to learn from it and to do our best. The Buddha's teachings are there to bring us more and more awareness, so we have the choice to free ourselves. They are not there to discourage us. So these were some of the things I wanted to share and which might inspire some discussion amongst yourselves. Mainly I hope that all of you will have the chance to discover the richness of Buddhism, and I wish you all the best.